This episode of Test Drive is brought to you by Elmec and their EV Duty Smart Home Charger. What do marketing people love more than buzzwords? Absolutely nothing. That is the pinnacle of marketing, and it's been with us in the automotive world for pretty much forever. There really hasn't been a time that we haven't had some sort of buzzwords. In today's world, because electrics are becoming so popular, everybody wants to have a little buzzword when it comes to their electric vehicles. Toyota has Prime, that's for their plug-in hybrids. Yeah, BMW has had their e-drive system, and so on and so forth. Volvo has Recharge, and that would make sense if it was only for the electric vehicles, because you take a look at a vehicle like this 2022 Volvo XC40 Recharge P8, and you'd say, geez, a Recharge, that's going to be what they call all of their electric vehicles, make it nice and simple. Except it's not, because they also have the XC60 Recharge, and that's a plug-in hybrid. So Volvo could have had a very easy way to distinguish what is an electric car and what is a plug-in hybrid, and they've decided to make it very confusing for consumers, so rip. But anyway, what can you do? This, my friends, though, is a fully electric vehicle and looks pretty much like the XC40 that we drove a few years ago. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the best way to make an electric car. Why try and reinvent the wheel when you've got a form factor that works so well for people? Now, we're going to be talking about everything you need to know if you're in the market for the XC40 Recharge, a little bit about how this is different from some of the other electric vehicles that we've driven, and everything else you need to know about it. First off, this uses a 78 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery. There's about 75 kilowatt hours usable on it, and it uses a twin electric motor system. So one up front, one in the back. Both units produce 201 horsepower, so you get 402 horsepower total and 486 pound-feet of torque, giving you quite a bit of power out of a subcompact crossover. This is quicker than most of the electric cars that we've driven, and there isn't like a performance model or anything like that. This is how it comes. You get that setup no matter which one you go with here in Canada. Now, this can do 0 to 100 kilometers in 4.9 seconds, but it does seem like it will do it quicker. So Volvo, obviously, they're going towards the safety side of things. They don't want to say that their vehicles are super fast, but they really are. Now, for 2022, Volvo has done some tweaking with an over-the-air update. So this will affect older XC40 Recharges as well as the new ones that you're going to buy. You're going to see a little bit more range than you were getting before. This should do about 359 kilometers because it's all-wheel drive. That's why you're losing out some comparatively, considering this is a large battery on here. But the one thing I found about this, kind of strange, it will not tell you how far you have until you run out of electricity. In fact, there is no way to see what your current range is on this vehicle. Maybe if you have the Volvo app, which I don't have access to with this vehicle, it will tell you, but nowhere on the infotainment system or gauge cluster computer will it ever tell you the range unless you're down to 50 kilometers of range remaining, and then it'll tell you. We'll talk about that more on our road test. But for the most part, why this vehicle works is because it's essentially the same XC40 that we've driven before, but now electrified. So you have a front trunk. There's a small storage space there. I have the charging cables and everything in there. It's not that big, but for this size of a vehicle, it's not too bad. You still have the tunnel hump in the rear seat area because there are some batteries that actually go in between the rear seats. You know, they're underneath the rear seats, but that transmission tunnel that we usually see on typical cars is still present on this because Volvo has stuck some batteries in there, and then the rest of the batteries run along the bottom of the vehicle. So overall weight distribution is pretty good, although this does weigh about 1,000 pounds more than a similarly equipped XC40. So it is a heavy little vehicle, but that is what we find when it comes to the electric vehicles. There is no grille on the front either. That is a plastic piece that sits in the front there. And what's cool is the front badge, the Volvo badge, is heated. So in the winter, if you're driving along, the camera gets gunked up from snow, then the heat element on the front there should clear it off so you still have the front camera working, which is something that we haven't really seen before. Some vehicles will put a washer nozzle on there. This one makes it a little bit easier maybe to forget about it and still have it work. There's no snow today. There's no snow in the forecast, so I cannot test that, but I think it's pretty cool. The rest of the features that we will find on this vehicle are here. Full front LED headlights. You've got keyless access on all four doors, power folding mirrors, a power-assisted rear liftgate, and all the features on the inside that we would like to see at this price point. Panoramic sunroof, heated front and rear seats. We have 2 driver memory options, as well as some very comfortable seats up front. I really do like them. Interior lighting is all LED. And we also have the heated steering wheel. You have to add that as an option, even though ours is the ultimate trim. That is an option both here in Canada and the United States. Now, one of the major changes on the inside is the infotainment system. It's always been sort of a sore spot for us when we drive any Volvo vehicles. This is using the new Android-based infotainment system. Works so much better. There's a lot of cool things that come with it, i.e. you can sign into your Google account and be able to download apps, and more importantly, have access to Google Maps built in with all of the saved information that you would have if you're using it on your phone. So that is great. However, there's some stuff missing from it. There's no Sirius XM radio. There's no Android Auto or Apple CarPlay either, which, to be fair, that's not that big of a deal. But with no XM radio, it means you have to use your phone app, and you can't just download the app from the Google Play Store. You would have to stream it from your phone. So there's some small things that Volvo is supposed to be fixing down the road, but they haven't been added to this yet. Now, we could talk about this for a long time. I do think that the overall idea of letting a computer manufacturer, a hardware, software developer go in and do all of the infotainment stuff is best. Somebody like Apple or Google, they have a lot of experience in it. So let them design all of that. Let them update it so that it works well and then make the car work with it. So maybe in a couple of years with some updates, it will be superb. Right now, it's certainly better than what we saw on the previous version of Volvo's infotainment system, but it still could be a little bit better. But there is only so much I can do talking about this car standing in front of it. I want to take it on the road because I will have been driving this for quite a bit of time by the time you're watching this. So I want to go over my impressions on this vehicle, what else you need to know if you're in the market for it, and everything else about the 2022 Volvo XC40 Recharge. All right, we're going to be talking quite a bit about how this vehicle performs on the road. And there's a lot to go over because it is important to discuss what I've been able to experience when driving the XC40 Recharge. Now, first of all, we did complete our 100 kilometer test loop. That was 22.5 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. Now, that makes sense because most of the electric vehicles we've tested over the course of our show have been front-wheel drive. This one, all-wheel drive, so it would compete pretty close in terms of price and overall offerings to the Mustang Mach-E. Now, this is a smaller vehicle than the Mach-E. This is considered a subcompact luxury crossover. The Mach-E is kind of like a compact vehicle, a little bit more towards the mid-size. But they're both about $70,000 Canadian. So it depends, do you take this Volvo or do you take the Mustang Mach-E? On paper, this vehicle has more performance over the regular Mach-E at 201 horsepower per motor, right? For a total of 402, it's really good. And the range is less, at least advertised range. So let's talk about that because my results have been very, very interesting. Every night I drive into Montreal, every evening. On my drive in, before I get to traffic, I'm averaging about 25, almost 26 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. Now that's because I'm on the highway, almost completely nonstop, going at the speed limit, obviously, with the air conditioning system on. I always keep it to 21 degrees. That's what I'm comfortable at. And I go. Now, when I get into traffic, now it's stop and go, and I'm going slower, and I'm using the regen braking, and I'm basically crawling the last 20 kilometers or so, my consumption, my energy consumption drops to about 22, 21 even kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. So in traffic, that makes sense, right? That's how electric cars work. These are best not being driven full throttle all the time. But when I come home at night, it's usually around 10 p.m., that's Eastern time, it's about 3-4 degrees. It's been single digits all week, so it's colder out. There is no traffic, so I'm pretty much going home the entire time without having to slow down, and I average about 30 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. That's a lot. So you're going to be using up more energy, no doubt. The problem with this car, and I've looked online, I looked in the owner's manual, I even watched a video. Alex on Autos did a very comprehensive review on this. Never in the 34-minute video he did he mention this. You cannot see the range on this vehicle. Volvo does not publish the range. It is a mystery. That is why the title of this is The Range is a Mystery, because when you get into the car, it just tells you what the battery percentage is. 100%. That's it. It's not until you get down to around 13 or 14% range left. Once you get to 50 kilometers of range remaining, now it'll pop up on the gauge cluster to say, hey buddy, you got 50 kilometers left. I hope you're somewhere you can charge up this car. And that is a huge problem. I don't care what Volvo is thinking in their little minds. Perhaps in Sweden, a much smaller country geographically, maybe there's a much higher density of electric chargers there, then people aren't as worried about it. But here in Canada, here in Quebec, I plan my drive based on how far I can go. So when I wake up and it just tells me I have 100% range, it's not good. Now, one benefit, and I'm not saying that this makes up for it, but because we're using a Google Android-based infotainment system, we have built-in Google Maps. I'm signed in with my Google profile. So I have my home address set up, my work address set up. It's all there. When I get into the car, it tells me, it kind of knows where I'm going to be going based on the day, based on the time. So it gives me this suggested time and destination that I think I might be going to. So when I wake up, go to school, this car says I'll have about 70% battery left by the time I get to where I'm going. And then when I'm at school, there's no charger, unfortunately, so I sit there, and when I come home, again, it tells me how much range, or how much percentage rather, I'll have when I get home, and it's about 30%. So I'm using up almost 75% battery just to get to and from school, and that's a 90 kilometer drive, so 180 kilometers both ways. Now, if you think about it, I tested this twice because I only went to Montreal twice with this car this week, but both times I ended up at home with about 30% range left. And if I'm only doing 180 kilometers, that means I'm looking at upwards of 250 kilometers max for the overall range that I can do with this vehicle in the current climate. Again, single digit temperatures. It's wet most of the time on the road. It hasn't started snowing yet, so we still are on the Pirelli Scorpion Zero tires on here. But the idea is it's not close to that 359, and that makes sense. It's colder weather out. But the fact that you don't get to see the range, I don't know. I don't understand what Volvo is doing, because all of the plug-in hybrids we've driven, they show you how much electric range you have, how much gas range you have, how much you have total with the two put together. So I just don't understand why Volvo has said, you know, we're not going to do it. Like, I get it. I can almost put myself in their shoes and say, listen, it's so inaccurate, because look, you know, as I said, when I was driving home or driving to school, it says I'm at 25, 26 kilowatt hours, and then it drops to 22. So obviously it is never going to be precise until we get to the point that these vehicles can do 2,000 kilometers on a single charge, and that kilowatt per 100 kilometer makes a little bit more sense. It will never really make that much sense. So the accuracy is a big factor. So that is the only thing I can think of. The other thing, and that's probably plausible too, is this infotainment system isn't finished. And that's a bit of a concern, because Volvo has decided to let Google essentially develop this. They're at their mercy in order to accommodate all the features and everything that they want for it. Now, as far as I'm concerned, letting a company like Google or Apple do the infotainment software is a better option, because that's kind of what they do. They know software. They know how people interact with their phones, with their devices, how they want to get things going. And that's just getting the two of those put together, the automaker and the software developer, to get together and figure out, okay, what information do we need? So perhaps this system might have been developed as more of a generic vehicle tool. So maybe it's like, well, you don't really need to see the range necessarily on a gas car, even though you should, but maybe that's also part of it. It's just a limitation of this Android operating system at this time, because the vehicle is supposed to get over-the-air updates, and it is supposed to add features down the road and presumably be updated as well, so it will more or less stay current, because the infotainment system works so much better than the previous non-Android version that Volvo was using. It was always one of our biggest complaints when it came to Volvo vehicles, is you get in the car and it would take forever for the infotainment system to turn on. This works so much better. Small hiccups, but for the most part, it is better. There's no XM radio as of this point, and I did actually take a look. There is a technical service bulletin that has been put out, actually two of them, for the infotainment system from Volvo. There is supposed to be a way to get it. You have to force an update, by using a USB stick, and I can't do it. I don't have that software. So you can take it to your Volvo dealer and maybe you'll have XM radio, but at least as of filming this vehicle has not been updated with that software, so I still have to use Bluetooth streaming from my device to be able to listen to XM radio. And I've also noticed some small issues too, like my home address, it's never changed on Google, but it's taking me to a different address when I click home. Again, probably a Google issue, not so much Volvo. But if you can get past the fact that this will consume more energy than other electric vehicles, if you can get past the fact that you'll never know how far you can actually go with your Volvo, then you will enjoy the car, because the drive on this has been fantastic. On smooth roads, it's a dream. Even on some of the rougher roads, this does handle the roads quite well. It eats up the bumps. It's very smooth. Interior road noise, very quiet. Comfort is outstanding. I have never disliked the seats on a Volvo, new or old. They are very comfortable. We've got, you know, essentially Alcantara on the inside portion, leather on the outside. It is very nice on here. So overall, seat comfort is good. Back seat space good as well. I'm able to sit beside and behind myself in the back seats if I needed to. So the overall functionality of this car is quite good. And obviously, if you're looking at a vehicle like this, you want to make sure that it works, right? You don't want to be just buying an electric car just for the sake of it. I know some people do, but if you actually want to do stuff with this, it makes sense. And the way that the batteries are placed along the bottom, you know, essentially making up the floor and the structure of the vehicle, and then through the transmission tunnel, which doesn't exist, but there are batteries in between here, it makes it more efficient. Obviously lower center of gravity as well, giving the car a much more planted feel, but you lose very little, right? This feels a lot like the regular XC40, so the trunk space is great. So there's a lot of good about it. But like with the Mustang Mach-E, this is a really good car, but it's not a great electric vehicle. Again, you know, aside from the range, a couple other small things. There's no drive modes. You're essentially in normal mode, which allows you to go as fast as you want or as slow as you want, but there's also no brake force regen paddles, right? We kind of like to see that. And in fact, on Volvo's plug-in vehicles, they have a brake mode where you pull it down again and the vehicle will start to slow down as you let off the gas. Yes, there is a one-pedal driving mode. Volvo's own owner's manual says you're not supposed to use that on the highway, but it's also not convenient to go into it and turn it on and off. And personally, I don't like one driving pedals. I prefer if I have the control. So I can put it into brake mode. I can use paddle shifters to increase or decrease the overall strength of brake force regeneration. So things like that, not present on this vehicle, would have been nice. So again, it's close. It's a really good offering. It's nice to see Volvo offer a full electric vehicle, considering they have set a very aggressive mandate for themselves to become fully electric. So they got to start somewhere. So this is a vehicle that makes a whole lot of sense. I assume the upcoming C40 will be pretty good as well. Slightly smaller, maybe be a little bit more affordable, but this is kind of in line with what you would expect. $70,000 at the top end point. You get the car fully loaded. There's nothing that's missing at this segment or price point. I don't feel everything is here that you would really want. So ultimately, it is a good vehicle. I personally would take the Mustang Mach-E, but I can definitely see why people would be buying this, because there is a lot of good about it. And again, you guys have been good. One of the good things about this is the performance. There's no launch control. It is an electric car. So if we were to stop and go, holy crap, man, that is quick. Right off the line, and it just goes at 100. Woohoo! Now that is quick, buddy. Yes. That is one thing you get over the Mach-E. Maybe not with the GT version, but the regular Mach-E. This thing performs so well. So if you need to pass people, if you're on the highway, you know, you're coming around a corner and there's somebody slow, you need to go around, you just floor it, and the power and performance is there. You don't have to change mode. So I guess that is one benefit, is you just kind of go, and oh man, does it go. So performance on this, excellent stuff. So that's about it though. If you have any questions about this episode of Test Drive, please leave a comment below. I do try to get back to everybody as often as I can. Give a thumbs up to the video, and also consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. I appreciate you watching, and until next time, take care.